Hello and welcome to today's class. We are going to look at integers. And first of all, I want to start by defining what integers are. So I'm going to define this by first highlighting characteristics of integers. And in doing so, then maybe you'll get to understand what they actually are. So the first thing you want to know about integers is that they are all numbers. All of them are all numbers. All right. So what do we know about all numbers? All numbers are counting numbers starting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we can go on and on to infinity. Right. One thing I want you to notice about all numbers is that none of them are made of fractions. We already know how fractions are supposed to look like. All right. So a fraction basically is a number that has a numerator and a denominator. Okay. So I want you to know that the numbers that I have noted here, none of them have fractions. All right. Therefore, they can't. Of course, they can be written in decimal form, but also none of them have fractional decimals. All right, so that's the first thing you want to know about integers is that they're all made of all numbers. All right. Then the second thing you want to know about integers is that they are either positive or negative numbers. All right. So it is these same all numbers either being positive or negative. So they're either positive or negative numbers. All right, either positive or negative numbers. That is to mean that except for zero, that is to mean that every other number in the every other number in the set of integers can either be written as a positive or a negative number. For example, I can write 1 as a positive number, and I can also write 1 as a negative number. All right. Same goes for 2. I can write 2 as a positive number, and I can also write 2 as a negative number. So this here is -1. This here is +1, and this is -1. And what you're seeing here is +2, and the other one is -2. So basically, integers are all numbers. Okay, that is by definition. Integers are all numbers that are either positive or negative, and not having any fractions, and not having any fractions or decimal fractions. Now let me give you examples of integers, or what integers would look like, so that it helps you understand what I mean. So in doing so, we are going to tackle an example right here. So I'm going to list some numbers, and we're going to try and see if these numbers qualify to be integers or non-integers. Now, the first number I'm going to write here is the number 8, and I'm going to say that 8 here, being that it's a whole number, as you can already see, all right, and we can either have it as a positive or negative number, qualifies to be an integer. However, 8 here is a positive integer, so 8 is an integer. So this here is an integer. All right, then I'm going to mention another number again. I'm going to mention the number 5.5. 5.5. Now, 5.5 in this particular case, we say that it won't be an integer, so it will be a non-integer. And the reason for that is because it has a decimal fraction. 0.5. It has a decimal fraction. All right, the decimal part 0.5, all right there, is what disqualifies it from being an integer. It must be a whole number for it to qualify to be an integer, and therefore 5.5 is not an integer. Let's look at a number like -20. So -20, is it an integer or a non-integer? -20, you can already see, is a whole number. Of course, in this particular case, a negative whole number is therefore going to qualify to be an integer. So we can actually classify -20 as an integer. Now let us see another number, d here, assuming we are having 0.6. Is 0.6 an integer or not? 0.6 is not an integer. Reason is because it has a decimal fraction, that is 0.6. All right, it has a decimal fraction which is 0.6. Now, so therefore 0.6 therefore becomes a non-integer. All right, why? Because it has a decimal fraction. However, if only it was zero alone, then we would have said that it was an integer. But because it has the decimal fraction part, that is 0.6, then it does not qualify to be an integer, and so we classify it as a non-integer. I'm going to mention another number. Let's look at this number E, and that is negative 4.3. Negative 4.3. So negative 4.3, and you already get the pattern, you already get the drift. Anytime we are having a decimal fraction or a fraction written with a whole number, then that is not an integer. So therefore that means that negative 4.3 is going to be a non-integer. Reason being that it has a decimal fraction. So this here is going to be a non-integer. Let's look at another one. We are having f negative 4.3. Negative 4.3 is also going to be a non-integer. Same reason, decimal fraction. So this here, when classified, is going to be a non-integer. All right. Let's look at another one. We are having 15 and a quarter. 15 and a quarter. 15 and a quarter. Now, 15 and a quarter is also not going to qualify to be an integer. Why? An integer must first of all be a whole number. We can already see, and it must exclusively be an whole number. All right. So anytime we are having a number that has a fraction or a decimal fraction, then we say that that is not an integer. And this particular case, we have 15 and a quarter. The quarter bit is what disqualifies it from being an integer, and therefore 15 and a quarter will be classified as a non-integer. Now, for our last illustration here, we are having the number 14.0. We're having the number 14.0, and right here I want to pay keen attention, because this number here, as much as we have 0.0, is actually an integer. Why? Yes, the 0.0 part actually is not a decimal fraction. All right. 0 basically means that there is nothing. It's something does not exist. All right. So it's 14 point no decimal. So this is not actually a decimal fraction. It is just another way that we can write all numbers. So, for example, the number you're seeing here, that is 1, can also be written as 1.0. All right. The number you're seeing here, that is 2, can also be written as 2.0. The number you're seeing here, that is 3, can also be written as 3.0. And so that therefore means that all numbers can also be written in decimal notations. So writing a whole number in decimal notation does not qualify it from being an integer. All right. However, it disqualifies from being an integer the moment it has a decimal, a fractional decimal. All right. So that like 0.6 right there, 0.5, 0.3, and in this particular case we're having 0.0. So this here, being that it's 0.0, will qualify to be an integer. So this here is an integer. So that is it when we define what integers are. So for our next class, we will be handling addition and subtraction of integers using the number line. See you in the next one.